Hello and welcome to the Real Talk Podcast. My name is Matt Biegun.
And I'm Vickie Pierre. And today we are talking about open enrollment, and we have two guests who are going to help us understand what this is all about. And if y'all don't mind introducing yourself, starting with you, young man.
Hello, everyone. Nikolai Vitti, Superintendent.
Pearl Rogers, Executive Director for School Choice.
Thank you so much for joining us. So over the past week, there's been a lot of discussion about open enrollment with varying thoughts about its benefits and its offering. So Dr. Vitti, first question, what exactly is open enrollment?
So open enrollment continues to preserve every child's right to a free and public education and begins that process with still tying every student to a boundary or neighborhood school. The proposal would allow students at the elementary, middle, and high school, and more importantly, their parents, to possibly choose a school outside of their boundary if the school that they would like to attend has seats available. In addition to that, it preserves the magnet process in that it would not allow a student to leave a boundary school to go to a magnet unless they meet the criteria of that magnet program. That would also be preserved. And the importance of this is that right now in our school system, if you have a child who is academically gifted or academically or artistically, you have magnet choice options. Yet at the same time, although we have a special transfer process that allows parents to leave their neighborhood school maybe for a security issue linked to a sibling or the child's parent is a district employee and works on the other side of town, we do allow for special transfers, but that process sometimes is overly bureaucratic. It requires you to know someone in the system. It requires you to jump through multiple hoops, and we're trying to streamline the process to allow any parent, regardless of who they know or who they don't know, regardless of their networks, that if they're not satisfied with their boundary or neighborhood school and there's space in another school, that parent would be able to take their child to that school if they're willing to provide transportation to attend that school.
And Dr. Vitti, another question for you. The word utilization has come up in this conversation. How would you define that?
So utilization is defined by the state. We often hear something called the FISH report, and that it just looks at the number of seats, number of rooms and seats throughout a building that is considered legally able to be used for educational purpose throughout the school day. And that there's a percentage that's calculated based on the number of classrooms occupied or used, based on the number of students that enroll in that school, and then the amount available. So we have actually taken this issue of utilization a step farther to offer a more sophisticated and transparent view of utilization as it regards to this proposal, in that we will use a percentage that truly reflects the amount of classrooms used at a school. So if there are 4-year-old classrooms being used at the school, or what we call VPK, voluntary pre-kindergarten, classes being used, and that we would include that in utilization. If there are ESE classrooms used, mainly self-contained classrooms, we would include that in the percentage, along with music and art classes that are used. If space in the building is used or classrooms are used for those educational purposes, we would include that in utilization to clearly reflect how many classrooms and how much space is being used in the calculation to determine open enrollment opportunities.
And Mrs. Rogers, can you explain the current enrollment structure for listeners out there who might not understand what the boundaries are?
Of course, as Dr. Vitti stated, every student is assigned a boundary or a neighborhood school, as we would call it. And basically, that is where most parents start with the current enrollment. If for some reason their child is, as he stated, possibly gifted, academically talented, if they are versed in one of the arts, or if they really love technology, then we have our magnet process and our magnet applications. And parents actually have the opportunity to apply for magnet magnet applications during the months of January, and it ends on February 28th. And after that time, except for the limited special assignments that are in the secondary schools and the few that are in elementary, our parents, that's where the options have kind of stopped for us in Duval County. But there's a process from April through May 15th where parents can then choose those limited seats that are available in our present policy. So that is how the current enrollment structure is set as we stand right now.
So this will be kind of an open question to both of you. How would an open enrollment offering impact neighborhood and magnet schools?
Well, I'll start. There will be no impact or no difference with magnet schools because that process has already started, and we are actually starting to run our lottery this week. So there will be no impact on the magnet piece of it. As far as neighborhood schools, right now, all of our schools have selected a choice theme going into the 14-15 school year. And what open enrollment will do, from what I see, is it will actually give those schools an opportunity to showcase themselves. One of the things that happened in the Choice Expo was a lot of our parents in our community, they were not aware of all of the things that were happening in neighborhood schools. So this will clearly give them the opportunity to say, I am here, here is what we are about, here's what we do, and here's our program theme that we're going to showcase throughout our building to help build our academic success.
I think Ms. Roziers broke down the issue well. I think for our listeners need to understand where we stand right now as far as Duval County Public Schools is concerned. We in Florida offer many choice options to our parents, and whether we agree or disagree, those options are alive and well, and many of our parents utilize those choice options. For example, over 9,000 students now attend charter schools. Those are considered public schools, but obviously not part of our traditional public school makeup. We have about 20,000 students that use magnet as an option for their student, and we have roughly 15,000 students that use something that we would call other choice option, and that would include a McKay scholarship, so using dollars that are generated by an individual education plan. So an ESE student can use dollars linked to that to go to a private school and defray the cost of tuition, or go to another public school. We also have students that use what's called opportunity scholarships, to where if they're in an F school or a triple D school, they can transfer to a higher performing school where we are required to provide transportation. We have students that have left their home school based on the Nickelby or No Child Left Behind transfer process. And then we have students that and their parents that use special transfers. Again, that goes back to maybe there's a security issue connected to a sibling, an employee in the system works on the other side of town, or just other factors that we would consider in allowing a student to leave their boundary school. So whether we agree or disagree with choice, many of our parents are exercising choice options. The challenge with that is many parents are exercising a choice option that I would call an external choice option, and they're leaving the public school system. And that is great for the parent because they believe that they're receiving a better education maybe in another setting, but there's a financial reality to that, where with almost 9,000 to moving up to 10,000 almost, parents leaving for private or charter schools, that has a financial impact on us at almost $50 million. So even though particular schools are losing enrollment more than others, every time a student leaves our school system, they take the pure pupil funding from the state with them. And that affects all of our schools, all of our children, and the district budget at large. So this open enrollment process is not a silver bullet. It will not bring back every child from a charter school or even from a private school. But what it does is it gives our district, mainly our employees, starting with our principals, additional options, tools in the toolkit, or options on a menu to give to parents to stay in our traditional public education setting. Right now, for most parents, if they're not satisfied with their boundary choice or their boundary option, and they're not going in a magnet program because they weren't accepted, they weren't successful through the lottery process, we don't have much to offer them outside of the boundary school. And what we want to do in our school system is say, you're not satisfied with your boundary school, then what about this other school that might be in your neighborhood or maybe on the other side of town? But it allows us to be more customer service driven, more parent friendly, where we're not able to do that right now. And I think we are going to show our parents that we're more flexible, and that we are willing to accommodate them to keep them in the system. And ultimately, we have to recognize that parents are consumers. Parents are our customers, and they have educational options. And sometimes they're using options other than traditional public schools. We have to offer them more options within the public school setting. Unfortunately, we have functioned as a monopoly over the years. We assume that parents will choose their neighborhood school or traditional public education. And that was certainly the case for the most part 15, 20 years ago, with the exception of parents who were in higher socioeconomic status situations where they would send their child to a private school. Today, we function in a demand educational environment, not a supply. Our parents don't have to choose us, and oftentimes they're not. And we want to be more competitive with offering traditional public school options. This is actually about protecting, promoting, and preserving our traditional public school system by offering increasing options for them. And right now, they're limited. This doesn't go where we could go eventually with even offering transportation. That might be a process in the future. Right now, financially, we'd have to study the impact of that and see how many students use the open enrollment process. But it does move us forward in being more modern with engaging our parents and competitive in this increasingly competitive environment. Charter schools, namely, are increasing their numbers in Jacksonville, and their caps on enrollment are increasing. So with even schools, charter schools that are popular right now, let's say they're capped at 300, next year they may increase to 500. So those schools will become even more populated, and that means more likely than not, those children will leave our schools. I want to be very clear. I'm supportive of good, high-quality charter schools. I think that they should be available to all of our parents. But at the same time, this is about competition. And I want to allow our employees to have the tools at their disposal to compete appropriately.
Now, if you're at home listening or even at work listening, we want to run by some meeting dates coming up real quick. March 24th at Atlantic Coast High School, March 25th at Rains High School, and March 27th at Matthew Gilbert Middle. The meetings start at 6, so if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, be sure to be at one of those meetings because this will be one of the topics on discussion.
And so another question, and this is open to both of y'all. People are expressing their opinions about this proposal, and among the concerns expressed in opposition is the fear that low enrollment schools will close. What can y'all say about that?
I have made a firm commitment verbally and in writing. In fact, revised the first proposal for this policy change that I would not close schools based on low enrollment. I do not want the closure of a school attached to my legacy as superintendent in Duval County Public Schools. Instead, I would like my legacy to be about the increased enrollment in traditionally low-enrolled schools and also low-performing schools. We have invested additional dollars over this past year and a half in low-enrolled, low-performing schools. Sometimes getting to the $1 million mark in some of these schools. So we are investing more dollars through technology, through our QZAP grant, one-to-one, two-to-one devices, additional personnel at these schools through the form of graduation coaches, reading coaches, math coaches. We've also increased the number of partners in these schools to support our students that are falling behind academically, socially, and behaviorally. That will only continue as we go into next year with our Quality Education for All initiative, or QEA, where we're incentivizing our best principals to stay in these schools because we have great principals in these schools already, to move more of our best principals in these schools, to retain our best teachers in these low-enrolled, lower-performing type schools because we have great teachers already in these schools, and then move additional teachers that are outstanding into these schools. So it's all about a capital investment strategy to improve the student achievement in these schools, so more parents want to return to these schools or stay in these schools. But my commitment is absolutely firm that low enrollment would not lead to the closure of any of these schools. And I think the community needs to understand that we are dramatically promoting these schools and all schools in our system. Although we're talking about increasing choice, not only is that, I think, the right thing to do, because parents, I think, ultimately are the best position to decide what school their child should go to, but we want to promote our traditional schools. We want to promote our feeder patterns and our boundary schools. I've realigned how region chiefs support schools through a feeder pattern approach. So they're not just supervising elementary schools in isolation or middle or high schools, but they're supervising feeder patterns. We have Discover Duval Schools now, where we have community members and parents visit schools so they see the programs at all of our schools. We have strategically had our elementary students visit their feeder middle school and have middle school students visit their traditional high school so they actually see what the feeder pattern has to offer. We've developed a marketing program and a marketing plan to promote the great things that are happening in our school system, because that story has not been told. I would love to go back to a traditional feeder pattern approach where students go from an elementary, their neighborhood elementary, their neighborhood middle, and high school. The reality, though, is that choice over the past 10 years has led to many students leaving their boundary schools and their feeder schools. That's not entirely a negative thing, but we should and we will continue to promote the feeder pattern approach while adjusting and adapting to an aggressive external choice process to keep kids in our traditional public schools, but hopefully while trying to protect and expand and enhance our feeder pattern approach as well.
And Mrs. Rogers, you touched upon this earlier, and it really goes with what Dr. Vitti was discussing. It appears that with this year's School Choice Expo, a lot of parents were discovering things that they didn't know were there, and it does appear that, the district is investing in these schools. So do you feel that parents are hearing more about what's going on in these schools, and that could potentially help with this proposal?
I would say not only do I believe that they are doing well with it and that we're hearing from them, I know that we're actually hearing more from them. And I think of one word when I hear your question, and the one word is excited. Just from the first time of hearing about open enrollment, the Choice Office in one day received 32 phone calls from parents about open enrollment. What does it mean? Where can I get my application? When can I get my application? They are excited to hear about the options and that options are indeed increasing. They are excited to see and hear what schools are offering, and they are just excited to know that there will be options for their children. And they're saying that it's not that they are opposed to their neighborhood, but they want to shop. They want to hear. They want to see and know that the choice that they are making is indeed the best choice for their child.
So it sounds like everybody outside, the parents, are pretty excited about the idea of open enrollment. What are you hearing about the educators who are inside the school? What are they saying about open enrollment?
Well, I think Ms. Rozier pointed to it. It was interesting because we met with all of our principals before moving forward with the recommendation to change the policy. And I presented directly to them, took quite a few questions and concerns for the principals, and then left the room and gave them a anonymous survey to complete where they only had to indicate whether they represented an elementary, middle, or high school, and whether they were in favor of the open enrollment policy change or not. And 86% of the principals in our school system agreed that open enrollment was the right step to take in this constant evolution of choice and dealing with the landscape of options for parents. For the most part, principals are excited about it because they know that the landscape is different, that students do not pick necessarily their neighborhood school, and they don't have to pick their neighborhood school regardless of this policy. And we see that through magnet schools and charter school options. But they're excited about being able to recruit any child if they have space. And I think it changes the landscape, especially for our parents. We, I think, are starting to wake up in Duval County Public Schools that our parents are the consumer. And that's empowering for parents because they should know that we care about their voice, we care about their experience, and that will make our principals and teachers and support staff even more responsive to their needs and their issues. So our principals are ready. They're ready to promote their programs, especially the new ones. As was mentioned, in order to promote the feeder pattern approach, we looked at what high schools were offering programmatically and worked backwards to build a progression from the elementary to the middle school level, scaffolding to that program at the high school level. And so now every one of our schools, every elementary, every middle school, and every high school has a theme or a program that it will promote to attract students and parents to their schools. This has not been done outside of magnet schools for the most part in our school system. So we are evolving as a system rapidly because the market is changing rapidly and we're responding. And that's why this policy is so important in a seemingly short period of time. We have to be more responsive to an ever-changing landscape for choice.
And I can also tell you, not only are we receiving phone calls from parents, we're also receiving phone calls from principals because they want to make sure that their utilization capacity numbers are correct, and they're ready to take the students. They're saying, how many students can I add? When is the application coming out? So not only is it coming from parents, but also from the principals because they are excited to fill their schools.
And parents have been, the parents that have seen me at an event or in the grocery store or throughout the community or even phone calls or emails that I've received have been overwhelmingly positive. They want more options. In fact, the only pushback that I've received from parents is they want transportation along with the choice options. So that continues to speak to their desire for more choice options, not to be in a state of protectionism where we limit options. I think we never win by disempowering parents with options, regardless of what the unintended consequences might be on the adult level. We have to focus on what students need and what parents indirectly need because we're also talking about children.
So when we talk about open enrollment, is there an impact on the budget with this proposal?
No, there's no impact on the budget. We are not creating new lines of transportation for students if they are going to leave their boundary school for another school. However, there is an opportunity for parents to maximize our current bus lines. We have actually more lines of transportation throughout the county than JTA does. And so it is likely that if a parent wants their child to go to a school outside of their boundary school, there's an existing line of transportation that they may be able to use to prevent themselves from having drive their child to school or to coordinate a ride. But from a financial point of view, we would not add lines of transportation, nor would there be any budgetary impact on this proposal other than the positive of retaining students in our school system. So that means not losing the pure pupil funding if they went to a charter school because we offered them an opportunity. And in fact, we're maximizing our existing lines of transportation and buses that may not be full, that may have more students in those buses because they're being maximized for other transportation options.
Now, if you want to get your voice heard on this topic, we have 3 community meetings. They're originally scheduled for budgeting, but now they're going to also include the open enrollment process. They're March 24th at Atlantic Coast High School, March 25th at Rains High School, and March 27th at Matthew Gilbert Middle. All the meetings start at 6. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you definitely want to go to one of those meetings. And also, don't forget duvalschools.org. We're keeping that up to date as well. Also, if you're listening to this and you've heard people that might not know what's going on with open enrollment, feel free to share this with them. Also, just click on this link and email it to them, and then they can get some of their questions answered without going to one of the meetings. But once again, come to the meetings. If you have a question, something that may pertain to you, don't forget you can also email in Pearl Rogers. What would be a good email address or phone number that people could contact you at?
Our choice office number is 390-2082, and I am rogersp@duvalschools.org.
All right. Well, we got a lot of great information today. Thank you to both of you for joining us. I'm Vickie Pierre.
And I'm Matt Biegun, and thanks for listening to Real Talk Podcasts.